In this video, we want to do a drop-by-drop titration of potassium permanganate and hydrogen peroxide. Here I'm adding uniform drops of hydrogen peroxide, and I count them. It's an arbitrary number. It depends on what you have. In this case, I'm counting to about 20. And then I'm going to add a big dose of acid. The acid is not a stoichiometric issue here. We're putting this into a large excess because we want the permanganate to reduce completely. Put a little stir bar in here and heat it up some. This is particular for this titration. It wouldn't be the same for an acid-based titration in terms of heating. But this allows me to not have to worry about stirring it as we go. Also, because we're only putting in a small amount of drops, I'm going to go ahead and add a little distilled water just to have a little body to this so that when it reacts, I have a decent amount of liquid. This doesn't partake in the reaction. It just adds a little bit of volume to it to help it work a little better, as opposed to having this small amount of liquids splashing around. Now I'm adding the potassium permanganate, drop at a time. I count these drops very carefully, and I try not to suck it up and blow a little air through it. I want to have nice uniform drops. I'm assuming that each drop is the same as every other drop, both for the permanganate and the hydrogen peroxide and within each group. Otherwise, it doesn't help me if it's not. So I don't have any air in the line, and I try to just make nice uniform drops. As you can see, I'm adding the purple, and as the stir bar spins around and mixes the mixture, the reactants react and the color goes away. I'm looking for the point at which one drop changes the color from colorless to a pink hue and persist as a pink hue. I'm doing this because I really don't know the concentrations of each. When I get done with this particular drop-by-drop titration, I end up adding 20 drops of the hydrogen peroxide to 120 drops of the potassium permanganate. That means it is a 1:6 volume ratio. So if I put in 10 milliliters of the hydrogen peroxide, I would need over 60 milliliters of the potassium permanganate to reach the equivalence point, which means I would need to go through a full burette, and I wouldn't have any idea where the endpoint is. Putting drop by drop at a time through a burette and going through 60 milliliters would take forever. So while this little experiment may take, 10 minutes, it could save you literally hours by trying to figure out roughly where the endpoint is. You might need to dilute one of the reactants, and it just tells you roughly where you're going to be.